I'm going to be using a rude word in this video. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to tell you about the shit to value ratio, an idea I consider to be really helpful for a number of years, but I'm also going to explain why I've changed my mind completely about it. Hey, how's it going? This is Scruffy Leadership, a YouTube channel about management and leadership aimed particularly at software engineers. My name's Ben, and I've been a leader and a manager in the tech industry in the UK and the US for over 25 years. So, shit to value. You can apply this idea to lots of things, but in this video, I'm going to be talking about people. So, what is the shit that I'm talking about? I'm talking about the kind of shit that people can generate for you. A classic example being complaints that you receive about a report from people they work with. That's a lot of shit to deal with. And how about value? What does that mean? Well, it's some measure of the work the person does, their productivity perhaps, how much value they generate for you and your team and the organization you both work for. And what about the ratio? Shit to value. Well, for a number of years, I used to use this as a way of measuring what it was worth putting up with. A report that was super productive, but also generated a lot of complaints, a lot of shit, might have a shit to value ratio that was tolerable. Whereas if someone generated a lot of shit without a corresponding amount of value, that wasn't worth dealing with. Now, I view this very differently now. First of all, there's always going to be some shit to deal with. What I mean by that is that being a manager is not all about dealing with nice things, bonuses and promotions. It's also about dealing with things that go wrong and things that are hard and things you'd just rather not touch with a barge pole. That kind of thing isn't really what I mean by shit here. It's not fun, for sure, but it's part of the job and it's to be expected. On the other hand, if your report is upsetting colleagues or causing unnecessary strife, that's shit. And if you ask me, it doesn't matter how much value they produce. If the shit they generate is non-zero, then this is something you need to deal with. I don't mean you should immediately fire them or try to transfer them to another team or anything. Instead, you need to talk to them. You need them to understand that the behavior is not acceptable. So you can use the SBI model to ensure that you're giving them a clear and timely sense of what happened. SBI, situation, behavior, impact. So you describe the situation and their behavior and then what impact that behavior had. And then you offer them support in improving. Now, there might be some situations that are worse than this. Racism, homophobia, or sexism in the office, for example, are not a matter for feedback. They're a matter for HR. But assuming it's something that does not cross that kind of red line and it's something you think there's at least a chance that the person can work on, then you need to talk to them. And so your goal is not to get their shit to value ratio down, but rather to get the amount of shit they generate to zero. And again, to be clear, when I say shit, I don't just mean things you have to deal with. I mean really serious stuff. So one useful rule of thumb is that if other people complain about their behavior, then that probably counts as shit that needs to go. So what's the point of this video? Why am I framing it with an idea I no longer believe in? Well, the reason is that I think this idea of a shit to value ratio is pervasive. You can probably imagine how it manifests. I have a problem with my report Charlie. He's such an amazing developer, but his interpersonal skills are terrible. I have to deal with complaints about it every week. And this is just way too common. And it doesn't just happen with software engineers or with junior people. It happens in all kinds of roles at all kinds of levels. But for the purposes of this video, I'm thinking particularly about how it applies to software engineers. There's this mistaken idea that it's okay for software engineers to lack interpersonal and communication skills. It's seen almost as a joke rather than a problem. But the reality is that the bar for software engineers in terms of professionalism, courtesy, and respect should be set at exactly the same level as it is for everyone else. And that bar should be pretty high. If we let somebody off the hook because they're the only one that understands some obscure legacy system, we contribute to creating a toxic workplace for other people that have to work with them. So the point I'm making with this video is that although you might not have heard the phrase shit to value ratio, I'd be willing to bet that you've come across the concept behind it at some point. And I'd further be willing to bet that this was not a pleasant experience. It probably took the form of you or someone else being insulted or talked down to by a colleague and another colleague explaining it away. Oh, that's just Megan. She's a genius. No one should have to put up with being treated badly by a colleague. And if you have a report that's treating others with a lack of courtesy or respect or worse, you have a responsibility to make clear to that report that this cannot continue. It's worth clarifying that you'd find it impossible to promote them or give them a positive performance review if they continue with this behavior. That's one way to make concrete the idea that this isn't just a subjective thing. It's not just someone being oversensitive. How we work, how we interact with our colleagues is just as important as what we do. One final thought, there are some people that generate the kind of shit I'm talking about here who will never change. So don't assume that that's the case up front, but if you've really invested in helping a report see the problem with their behavior and you've done everything you can to help them change their behavior, but they show no sign of being willing to change or to recognize the concerns you raise, then you probably do need need to move on to more formal HR processes, and ultimately you probably don't want to have that person in your team. In most cases it won't come to this, and I hope you don't have to deal with it, but you should be more willing to go down this path than to simply tolerate the intolerable. If you need convincing about this, just remember it's not just you that suffers. If you tolerate the bad behavior, you're neglecting your responsibility to your other reports and to your colleagues. Still, in most cases, people will listen when you give them the right kind of feedback in the right way. And for tips on how to do that, check out this video here. And if you found the tips in this video useful, please do subscribe to the channel. I have lots more useful insights to share. And if you really found it useful, consider hitting the like button, which helps this video reach more people like you that are looking for advice on becoming a better manager. Bye. See you soon.